What happens after we leave the upper room? That's what we're going to talk about today in John 18. He's preparing them for joy, for persecution, and for their mission coming up. This is a gut-wrenching chapter. We're getting very close to the end. And this statements, these prayers, these last lessons are just so incredibly moving. We are going to see now the beginning of the betrayal of Jesus. So Jesus crosses the Kidron Valley and goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, what I call the Olive Garden. But like I said, I spent a lot of time up there, and it was a long historical burial place. Mentioned that my great-grandfather is buried there. People who were Jewish believed that they would be among the first resurrected if they're on that place. It's a cross from the city of David, the original Temple Mount, and not terribly far from where David was a shepherd. Jesus finished speaking to his disciples. They crossed over. They go what was called across to the brook of Kidron. And this is a valley of Kidron between two mountains. And I didn't see any water in there. But I was there in the middle of summer, and Israel is a place like wet season, dry season. And I was definitely there in the dry season. I remember I saw one cloud the entire summer I was there. So it was dry. There was no water in there, but I guess it fills with water from time to time. He goes up to this place. He's been there before. He wept over Jerusalem in this very location. And they, being the apostles, would have been familiar with this location. Judas would have also been familiar with this location. And Judas didn't come back alone. He brought a band of soldiers and officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees. Probably also paid for them. We see in other places he paid for them. This is going to be Herod's soldiers, not Roman soldiers. Herod, because he was king, was allowed to do his own law-making justice. And these would have been his own soldiers that were still under control of his son. They came with lanterns, torches, weapons. This has escalated fast. And it wasn't just a few guards. This is an armed delegation. That's a deep level of betrayal just coming here. And some people estimate that there was maybe up to even 600 people that Judas gathered together, paid for, to go meet with Jesus. Jesus knows, what's happening. Like I said, if you're in Jesus' appointment book, even if you're not, he knows what's going on with him. And so he asks them, who are you seeking? Who are you looking for? And they answer, Jesus of Nazareth. He responds, I am he. Ego, eimi, I am. This is a tie back again to the very name that Moses got from God. Who should I say sent me? I am. This is how God identifies himself. And now he is tying himself to God, the God of Exodus. Jews would have understood this. And like I said, this is what Roman guards, Jewish people who are there now to arrest him. So he's identifying him with himself. It says that the soldiers drew back, fell to the ground. I mean, hardened soldiers, right? The Herod's army was nothing to mock, right? But they knew that this man was claiming the name of God. And they, like I said, mostly going to be Jewish people. There were probably also Hellenized Jews in there. There might also have been Greeks and people from other nations. Herod's army was made up of a lot of people who were kind of pure mercenaries from all over the place. But they knew what was being said. They understood this, fell to the ground. Jesus asked again, who are you seeking? And they replied again, Jesus of Nazareth. And he said, I told you that I am. So if you seek me, let these men go. He's protecting his disciples. He is fulfilling the words that he said earlier, of those you have given me, I've not lost one. He's not going to lose them right now. And now we see Peter. Peter's bold. He's impulsive. He wants to take action. And it said that Simon Peter pulls out a sword and cuts off the right ear of Malchus, the servant of the high priest. And we know from other gospels what happened. This is the first time that that name was mentioned, and like I said, it was possible the name wasn't mentioned because Peter was maybe involved in writing other gospels, and he was not really looking to, "Yeah, it was me, I was a moron, I did that," right? But John, this was probably written in 90 AD. Peter was probably dead decades. And with John being the last one alive, now maybe he feels free to mention the name. But Jesus then rebukes Peter and, put away your sword. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Meaning, shouldn't I fulfill the plan that has been in motion since the beginning of time? Your sword's not going to fix that. Nothing's going, this was meant to be. This is meant to happen to save all of mankind. Now, we know in other gospels that Jesus puts back Malchus's ear, showing him mercy, but showing mercy for Peter because he would have been charged with a crime. And now he buried the evidence. There's no more crime out there anymore. So Jesus is then taken. He goes to the former high priest of the Sanhedrin, Annas, who is the father-in-law of Caiaphas. He was the high priest. They go to his court. We see all sorts of things that are happening. They strike him and then they mock him like, if you're the God, you tell us who struck you. It's all really awful stuff. So Annas was deposed as high priest in 15 AD. Some people felt like he was removed. Other people feel like that there was just times that you were the high priest, but he still had a lot of influence in the doings of Jerusalem. Feel like the reason that he was brought to Annas's house is that Caiaphas then would go run off and gather the Sanhedrin. Remember, 70 judges, right? So he'd probably run off to go get them. This is going to be some sort of a pre-trial. That's not how trials work in this time. There was supposed to be a lawyer protecting the accused. There was supposed to be an accuser. There was supposed to be witnesses. It says in other gospels they try to drum up witnesses, but there was no witnesses to be found. They were no evidence that he was doing anything wrong. And so Peter's following at a close distance. I sort of see this as like a spy mystery. He's trying to see what's happening with his rabbi. Can we bust him out of there? Can we rescue him? And it was a disciple of the high priest that helps Peter get into the courtyard. Servant girl asks him, "Aren't you one of his disciples?" And Peter denies it. And the people inside are warming themselves by a fire. So Peter goes in and joins them, probably trying to blend in, hear what's happening. We know he's within eyeshot of Jesus. And then he's asked again and denies it a second time. And then finally, a relative of Malchus says, "Well, you're the guy who was with Jesus. I saw you in the garden with him." It'd be memorable if your cousin had his ear cut off by this guy. And Jesus says, "No." Third time, rooster crows. This isn't about Jesus losing his faith. He's terrified. He's scared. He's in a courtyard full of soldiers and supporters of the Sanhedrin, and they just arrested his teacher. Probably going to put him to death, I would gather. And I think this is one of the saddest moments in the entire New Testament because he knows. He was told this was going to happen. Jesus told him that this was going to happen. But here's the real big difference. Judas does what he does and then ends the story, kills himself. Peter does something that is a betrayal, and the story doesn't end. He will be restored, and he hangs on to his faith. And so we're going to visit that later. So Jesus is now questioned by Annas and asking him these questions. And Jesus is like, "I preached every day in the outdoors, in the midst of everyone. If you had questions about what I was saying, why didn't you come and ask me questions? I was out there in public." And when he said that, one of the officials that was standing there slapped Jesus. You don't talk to the high priest like that. And Jesus said, "If I've done something wrong, bring me evidence. Show evidence of what I have done that is wrong." So then Annas takes him out and brings him bound to Caiaphas. So now we're moving into the second fake trial. Then very early in the morning, we're going to get up at the crack of dawn and we're going to take Jesus in because, it's night. Pilate's not working at night. So we're going to, wait for the crack of dawn. We're going to take Jesus in. They bring Jesus to Pilate. And Pilate is now, the Roman governor, not a religious leader. He's not Jewish. They refused to enter Pilate's office because the leaders wanted to stay ritually clean. They're going to kill a guy. But yes, going into an office, that's what's going to make you ritually clean. So Pilate comes out to them and says, well, what charge do you bring? I'm sure Pilate saw this a million miles. They're eventually going to take him to me, and I'm going to have to deal with this. And their response is, if he wasn't doing evil, we wouldn't have brought him to you. You should just trust us. We brought him to you, therefore he's wrong. That's not a charge. That's not a crime. And Pilate tells them, well, then if he did something wrong, judge him by your own law. Well, we're not allowed to put anyone to death. They were not allowed to punish people through execution. They didn't want punishment. They didn't want the Jewish laws, even though he broke what they considered to be a Jewish law. They wanted capital punishment. They wanted Roman punishment. And only Pilate could give that. So this fulfills the prophecy about the kind of death Jesus would have. Crucifixion was purely a Roman death. If he would have been killed by the Sanhedrin, it would have been stoned to death, secretly stabbed in the back of the alley, or, something like this. But crucifixion, that's a Roman death. So we need Pilate's involvement in this. And so Pilate asks him, are you king of the Jews? And Jesus asks, well, did you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me? And Pilate says, well, am I a Jew? Your own people handed you over. What have you done? He is staying out of the fray. Pilate's wife told him, don't have anything to do with this. There is tradition in the church that Pilate's wife became a Christian, that she was a follower of Jesus, and told him to stay out of this entire situation. So I don't know if this is why Pilate is saying what he is saying, but I think we got to look back at the goals of Pilate. Pilate is trying to prevent a riot, prevent Jerusalem from having a meltdown. That's what happens in 70 AD, riot, rebellion. And so he's trying to keep the peace. If he loses Jerusalem, he'll probably be recalled back to Rome, not in a good way. He'll lose his standing. He might not be made governor of another place. He might be put back on the front lines of a military. He has to keep this area safe because that's his job, to keep this area following Roman law, and to keep his own political career going strongly. And Jesus then responds and says, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would be fighting you right now. My kingdom is not here. So Pilate says, so you are a king? And Jesus said, you say that I'm a king. For this I was born, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Yeah, I'm sure Pilate thinks, well, I listen to true things. What are you saying? But then Pilate asks a haunting and very modern question. What is truth? He doesn't wait for the answer. He walks right out. That has been a question that has echoed across the centuries. Someone said that Pilate might be the very first postmodernist thinker. There's no truth. It's all relative. It doesn't matter. There is no such thing as truth. There is truth. And so then Pilate goes to the crowd and says, I don't find guilt in him. This is him thinking, I should release him. He didn't break Roman law. He could cause a riot by me killing him. If he did something wrong, this has nothing to do with us. And so then he goes out to the crowd and says, I don't find any guilt in this man. And whether there were some people that think that this wasn't really a tradition, I don't know. And instead, he sort of says, there's a tradition. Shouldn't we release the king of the Jews? And everyone screams back, no, release Barabbas. Barabbas means son of the Father. Some people in tradition say his name was Jesus Barabbas. So a man who is guilty of leading a rebellion, named Jesus, son of the Father, is let go when Jesus, who is actually the son of the Father, remains on the hook for this crime. That's us, right? Jesus is going to the cross. He did nothing wrong. And yet we are the ones as humanity that does something wrong, and we're not going to the cross. Jesus is paying our price. And that ends chapter 18 with the innocent Son of God being found guilty to go to death while the guilty man goes free. It's unfair. It's unjust. This whole thing has been. He didn't get a real trial. He didn't get real accusers, witnesses, any of those things. This is unjust. And it's a lesson that we take away, that Jesus takes our place and we are the ones that are set free. And what I'm going to meditate about this week is this idea about fear. Peter, first of all, is impulsive, doesn't want his rabbi taken away. I'm going to take out a sword. Jesus does not call for us to take out a sword and take out people who were doing that. He did not ask them to do that. And Jesus even sees Peter in that courtyard, looks at him when Peter denies him a third time. Suddenly, the bold man is afraid. And this is crushing to Peter. He wept at this moment. And so we're going to have to face all these moments in our lives with grace and humility and quelling our fear. Jesus isn't surprised by our fear. He wasn't surprised by Peter's fear. He knew it was going to come. Instead, he is always calling us to come back to him. He is always calling for us to have restoration. And that's what God really wants us to do. And what I'm going to pray about is for us to have the courage to speak the truth in times of fear, the humility not to be prideful and swing our swords around at people who disagree with the word of God, but that we always compare ourselves in the plumb line of Jesus' life and his words so that we can stand firm in truth, but with love. And what I'm going to share with other people is that idea that Jesus' kingdom is not of this world. Neither are we. When we face these anxieties, fears, when politics gets in the way, when we're disappointed, when we're worried about people in our lives who are dear to us, we have to remember we belong to an eternal kingdom and that we have a God who prays and intercedes for us. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Appreciate you listening, watching, however you do this. I hope that you're reading along. And if you have anything to say to me, you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. And I hope that you can leave a comment in the channel. Like this post. Ask other people to join and start watching too, whichever, gets a community going. I appreciate you being out there. And remember, we're going to go and walk in faith, knowing that our kingdom come is going to be not of this earth.